Hey, business building warrior. Thank you for joining me on Silent Sales Machine Radio. I'm your host today, Jim Cockrum, and I have a guest today who'll be joining me very shortly. And you're going to love this guy's story. He really kind of blew me away with the results that he's getting and how quickly he's built a beautiful business. Now, in full disclosure, he's been doing e-commerce for quite some time, as he shares today. Towards the end of the interview, however, he points out, wow, I wish I'd have found Amazon and found this system so much sooner. I could have gone so much further than I went. But he accomplished some very impressive things early on in his e-commerce journey, as he'll share, but all of them eventually fizzled over time. He actually even found himself not too long ago delivering sandwiches, being a delivery driver. But he discovered replens, the Amazon replens model, as taught in the Proven Amazon course, provenamazoncourse.com, which, by the way, is where we get all of our guests for this program. Hundreds of guests on this program have been success stories from the Proven Amazon course. But Chris, our guest today, jumped into the replen system just a few months ago. As of last month, March of 2023, last full month as I'm recording this, he did about $300,000 in total sales using the Amazon replen system, as you're going to hear him describe today. That's pretty incredible just a few months in. And here we are in April recording this podcast episode. He's set to do that again or bigger this month. He's finding incredible products. He's found at this point about 200 profitable products, as he'll describe his process, how he's found them, what he does. Something that stands out today that's interesting to me is that he's doing a lot of merchant fulfill, meaning he's shipping the products himself out of two-car garage where he lives, his house, his small team. There's just a handful of them, 3 or 4 people. They're shipping $300,000 worth of stuff a month. And he shares all his details, his numbers, how he's sourcing his products, what his products are, his profits, all of that. He goes into detail on all of it. This is a longer episode today. So as I was recording the introduction afterwards, I decided I think what we'll probably do is break this into a 2-part episode. And you can enjoy this in 2 different listens. If you saw the full thing as one long conversation, you might be intimidated by the length. And I don't want anyone to be afraid to listen to this thing thinking, oh, that's long. So I'm going to break it up so you can consume it in 2 different parts. So the episode right after this one today will be part 2 of this episode. So look for it right next to wherever you're listening to part 1 today. We'll make that very easy for you and very clear. You can go to silentjimdotcom and see both episodes right next to each other as 2 great conversations with our guests today. Now, if you've never heard us talk about Amazon replens before, maybe you're new to our community, let me just tell you a couple things to help set this one up today. I've got 20 years of e-commerce experience. We've taught dozens of different strategies over those years. I've implemented and built businesses around dozens of different strategies. We've never seen anything as stable and reliable and scalable, as low risk, as easy to learn in small baby steps while putting money in the bank while you learn as the Amazon replens model. And we have hundreds of success stories on this podcast. This show is committed to, the vast majority of our shows are success stories with students who've launched businesses using those exact strategies that we teach in the Proven Amazon course. Hundreds of episodes. That to me is pretty impressive. Even as a guy who's been around as long as I have, I'm just not aware of anyone else who has a podcast committed to interviewing the dozens and dozens and dozens of recently successful students with the strategies that they teach. But that's what we do here. So if you're new to checking out selling on Amazon, or you think you know what it means to sell on Amazon, if you haven't studied the Proven Amazon course strategies yet, the replens strategies that we teach and started teaching several years ago and have now, I believe, perfected as much as anyone in the industry, well, that's where you need to start with that strategy. We're very proud of it. If you want to come hang out with hundreds of people from our community, listeners to this podcast, who are students of the Proven Amazon course, they've implemented the strategies, in many cases built big, beautiful businesses, or in some cases, they're just getting started. Maybe they're brand new, but hundreds of us are going to gather July 6th through 8th, 2023 in Columbus, Ohio. We'd love to see you there. The website is 3 words. Remember these 3 words, The Proven Conference. That's the name of the website, theprovenconference.com. Go there. We still have tickets. if you can't afford to attend because of the price of admission, we have scholarship programs that give completely free admission to those who are willing to fill out a short form and tell us a little bit about what you hope to accomplish and achieve at the event. We'd love to have you there. We won't call you out or embarrassing you in any way. As far as everyone at the event knows, you're just there attending as a paid attendee, just like everyone else. But because our event is now paid for by our generous sponsors who've really stepped up this year, we are excited to give away a good handful of first come, first serve scholarships. So get to theprovenconference.com/scholarship, and you will see the website. There's a link in the show notes as well to that same website, as well as everything else we're going to discuss today with our guest, who's built an amazing business very rapidly. Well, I think it's time for us to jump over and meet our guest today. Like I said, this will be a two-part episode, so look for the next episode right next to this one if you want to hear the second part of my conversation with our guest. Let's get Chris on the line right now. So Chris, welcome to Silent Sales Machine Radio.
Hey, Jim. Thanks for having me.
Pleasure to meet you, my friend. Really looking forward to your story. Ready to go?
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Yeah, I'm from Tampa, Florida. Was originally from Michigan and everything. I started e-commerce back when I was in high school, 2013, actually. I was in my senior year of high school and had kind of started doing what used to be more or less a podcast, but it was an interview with a guest, and we had a product that they were selling and whatnot that eventually moved over into me finding success. Mom had decided, hey, let me see if I can figure out some more ways to find money and whatnot online and whatnot. And so she comes to me in the middle of the night and goes, hey, let's sell t-shirts online. And I go, what do you mean t-shirts? What is this? And so she comes to me with this kind of like webinar thing of this t-shirt course and everything. And I didn't pay much mind to it because I was an 18-year-old kid. And I was like, I have no idea what this is. That can't be successful. Can't possibly, this guy, there's no way he made $100,000 selling t-shirts online on this website that he doesn't even own or whatnot. And then eventually I picked up the course, went through it in 2014 and started selling the name t-shirts that used to be all over Facebook and whatnot via Facebook ads. And my very first month that we had done that, started struggling a little bit. And then fast forward to the end of that month, had done our first $100,000 in sales doing that. And then
wow. Was that fueled by paid ads, I'm wondering?
It was all paid ads on that. So we had done 100,000 in commissions on the website, and our ads on that was $30,000.
Right.
That used to be back when you could scrape the user IDs and things off of Facebook, and literally have a T-shirt that would say Team Jim on it.
Yeah, I remember those being advertised, and they vanished suddenly. What, 5-6 years ago? It seems like, and they were gone. But
because overnight Facebook had made a sudden policy change, and it was just done. Business opportunity.
There's a great lesson in that. I mean, I've been doing e-commerce for 20 years, and if you're relying on the big boy platforms for absolutely everything, and you've only got one strategy, man, you want to diversify. It sounds like you learned that lesson overnight. I mean, talk me through what was it like the day before that change happened and the day after? Was that like a panicked day? Was that a hard day, or did you kind of see it coming?
So I had seen it coming because the amount of marketers that had jumped on it. It was
Sure.
one guy who put it out to a group of about 3,000 of us e-commerce T-shirt sellers and whatnot.
Right.
And very, very quickly, we all got the ball rolling, and we were all experienced great success doing it because it was something that no one was doing, and it was a very cool kind of a novelty thing of the time. Sure. And whatnot. And
but there was a saturation point.
It saturated so quickly. Every other ad was a name T-shirt on your feed, and people started getting very concerned. And that was back when Facebook had started. People had started noticing the privacy concerns of Facebook, and it suddenly, like a switch occurred in their head. Hey, this company has my data, or someone has my data that's advertising us. So yeah, kind of my history of e-commerce and everything since then. We went over to Shopify, kept being successful in selling our products, whether it was a t-shirt or an area rug, the canvas portrait sets that used to be advertised all over. Just kind of went from product to product. I had made my own print on demand company that we had done these products where we were doing all the fulfillment ourselves, as well as the production of them all. And then I got very sick and tired of Facebook constantly changing their paid ads rules on a
Right.
dime. Every single time something would happen, we would lose an ad account, or I would lose my own personal Facebook account that I had. I've probably gone through more Facebook accounts than you have,
That's funny.
most family relatives.
I've only had one account, but I've never done any Facebook advertising. But those people who do Facebook ads, I know it's brutal. They can turn on a dime, shut you down. That's kind of the reputation is if it's working, it's not going to last very long when it comes to Facebook ads.
There's a couple of my friends who have, kept everything compliant and everything through the years. They've always maintained, good standing with them, but stories of them are very few and far between.
Sure. Let me just ask you a question based on, because I know very little about Facebook ad marketing actually, but somehow in their infinite wisdom, Facebook saw fit to give me a blue check about a year ago next to my name because I've got a fairly large Facebook group and it's really active. And I did have people trying to pretend to be me. Mm-hmm. Is there any marketing advantage that you're aware of that I have as a guy who was given a public figure blue check, which, you could, that and 50 cents will get you a cup of coffee at McDonald's. But, what, if anything, advantage from a marketing vantage point do I have?
So up until recently, when they released that, pay for the blue check thing, and everyone can do that now, basically you had kind of more of the social clout is kind of how I had perceived it, where you could market yourself as a public figure or whatnot and go, hey, this is the real me. That from a branding perspective, the people with the blue checks, stood out. That more or less is a personal
less
brand.
So now that you can pay $15 a month and anyone can have it now by showing your driver's license, right? And it's the same blue check at this point.
Same exact blue check.
Well, I can say this, just to make us relevant for the listeners today, that I've noticed, like I get on popular discussion threads or, popular pages, news pages, that sort of thing. And if I leave a comment, even if the discussion's already been going for an hour or two, if I leave a comment, it tends to float and get a lot of attention with that blue check. Yep. So if that algorithm has remained the same, you really can, my followers on Facebook shot up. I went from like 3,000 followers to 18,000 over the course of the last year without really intentionally trying to do anything. It just happened because of that blue check that they threw on my account. I'm not paying for it, which is cool. But if you do pay for it, it might be a decent investment if you're looking to grow your followers on, because still very few people have done it, as best I can tell.
From my conversations with a few people on it, it's more, hey, this person is now relevant, they're paying, and they're going to be actively more engaging with our content and everything. Mm-hmm. And I'm talking like Facebook viewing it on everything. So what they have to say, they're paying for this blue check, that kind of thing. Yeah.
So hopefully there's some good tips for the listeners, and it certainly tells me that I should be using it in more creative ways than I have. Most of my time on Facebook is just spent in the Facebook group serving the listeners to this podcast. 72,000 members. There's a link at silentjimdotcom. And we talk about e-commerce, primarily Amazon. That's where I spend most of my time. But I do occasionally do a few other things. And on my personal page, for example, most things I post get a lot of attention now because they threw that blue check at me. So if you're trying to get more attention on Facebook, it might be worth giving it a shot, it sounds like.
But back to everything.
Yeah, exactly. Sorry for the distraction.
No, you're good. But so I just got sick and tired of dealing with all the ups and downs of Facebook and everything. And every day I kind of wanted to pull my hair out doing all these paid ads. I mean, my schedule was I'd stay up till 3, 4 in the morning trying to launch ad campaigns. That way it was for Pacific Standard Time and all that. So in about 2018, I switched over to doing Etsy. And I was pretty successful over on Etsy from the time I was doing Etsy in 2018 to about 2022, mid 22 here. before I kind of picked up Amazon. During selling on Etsy and everything, I caught a couple of big waves on some products that we were doing, like selling the custom printed face masks that everyone had to have. We sold like 100,000 of those in the 1.5 year window where that was required with COVID compliance and everything like that. And then during that time, I had kind of gotten a little bit bored just doing the print on demand thing that I had done for almost, 8 years at that point. And I turned to like botting hyper in demand items like shoes and PS5s and things like that. And that's kind of when I had gotten my start actually selling on Amazon. Was I had tried flipping and selling some of those computer parts in GPUs on
Hmm.
Amazon. Back at the time, there was that chip shortage going around, and I was like, oh
Right.
wow, we can make some good money. So I was buying stuff at Best Buy with our sales tax exemption, and then putting it on Amazon, and we had made a ton of sales very quickly. But then that fizzled out real quick once the supply had kind of caught back up with everything. So I was like, all right, back to I either need to figure out how to do this Amazon thing, or back to selling the PS5s. And kind of like your guys's proven book thing where you guys are selling books to the bulk buyers. We were
Yeah.
selling electronic stuff, whether that was iPhones,
Hmm.
PS5s, computer parts, to bulk electronics buyers that are more than likely selling on Walmart or Amazon themselves.
For those who don't know what Chris just mentioned, he's talking about our safe book profits is what you would now expect you to memorize the names of all of our courses. I can hardly do it. We got so many great courses and content out there, but safe book profits is, yeah, you can send books a whole box at a time to buyers that buy all of it. And rather than one at a time, you're going to get maybe slightly lower margins, but you can just move a bunch of books fast. You were doing that with electronics. That
I,
course, I'll stick a link in the show notes. It's at provenamazoncourse.com/safe book profits. But like I said, I'll put a link in the show notes for everything we talk about today. But yeah, that's cool, man. You've certainly been doing a lot of creative things. Have you ever had a real job, man? It doesn't sound like
so
it.
so other than working with family and whatnot during like construction and stuff like that, I
Yeah.
had one little event, and it was when Facebook was on Capitol Hill. I had lost all of my remaining Facebook ads accounts, and we had just moved about 6 months before from Michigan down to Florida. And I literally ran out of money. I had to call dad to get a loan, just pay for rent and everything, and help me and mom out and whatnot to take care of everything. And I had to go get a job, and I tried getting a job, like doing marketing and stuff. And I think I was 21 at the time, or it just was about to just turn 21, and no one would hire me because they were afraid I was going to come into their business and either leave very quickly, or I was going to learn whatever they were doing in their business and copy it.
Sure. Yeah. You're not a drone that just kind of shows up and does this job. You launch businesses, which by the way, that's the perfect way to do life, in my opinion, is to never have a paycheck. I mean, that to me is ideal. Never have a paycheck. You just build businesses. You're entrepreneurial. But it's interesting to me, as much money as you made, and maybe some people were doing math in their head. It's like, what? You ran out of money. How'd that happen? Well, that's the ups and downs. I mean, e-commerce it's boom and bust, especially if you're chasing the opportunity or the flavor of the month. And it's up and down. I've seen people, I've been doing this 20 years. This has been the only income for my family for 20 years, which is pretty significant, is a statistic for people who committed to that path. And one of the things I've had to rely on very heavily is the low hanging fruit, boring stuff, but always be looking for more of it. Not the latest shiny object stuff, but the boring stuff that's been working for 3 or 4 years, kind of under the radar. That's what I've relied on. Otherwise, we've definitely had those very tight moments where the stuff I've seen so many things that were working, now that stopped working 6 months from now, that I've gotten more cautious about what I get into, I guess. But I think people are going to be fascinated by your story because you were putting up some big numbers. Now you're trying to go find a job.
Yeah, so I had you'll love the job that I had done. I've always been good with cars and everything. My last name's Carr. I come from the Motor City and stuff. Loved Need for Speed video games as a kid and all that. And literally the only job I could get was being a delivery driver for Jimmy John's. And I
Good
needed
for you, though, man. You
Yeah,
know
I
what?
need
And to
to.
people out there hustling, listening to this podcast right now, maybe door dashing or, TaskRabbit or delivery driver of some kind, you've got what it takes to build a beautiful business and do what it takes to pay the bills, stay motivated, stay focused. But yeah, good for you, man. I don't take that as a negative. I take that as you doing what you had to do at the moment you were at in life. And,
Absolutely.
I remember my dad deciding to go back to college in his 30s and going to Bible college and working, praying one night saying, God, if I got to go to Taco Bell to pay my bills and feed my family, I will. What do you got for me here? And he found another job then, but he was willing to do what it took. And I'd like to think I'm there too. If things change and life changes, I'm going to do what it takes to take care of my family, and I'll do it with pride and excellence until the next opportunity comes. But I see the landscape of e-commerce is just so expansive. There's always a way to jump back in. So how long were you delivering sandwiches? How long did that last?
So it lasted realistically 2 months, and then I had made enough money that we were paying, the bills and everything finally. And then that last month, so it was 3 months in total. The last month I finally had enough time from working, every hour I could. They said, hey, we need a driver over here at this store, whatever. I was like, yes, I'll take the hours, just constantly kept saying yes, and got myself through the position that I was in, because I had never given up during that time. I was like,
Mhm.
hey, I'm going to get back up on my feet. This is a momentary thing. And it
Yes.
was funny, all my coworkers had kind of knew I was only there for this short time but they were, they weren't sure my stories that I had. They were like, well, why are you here? And I was like, well, fell on hard times, and it can happen to, the best of us. I was a young
That's right.
guy. I'm still a young guy, but I was a young guy who wasn't very good with his money. and
Sure. It doesn't matter how much you earn. You can outspend it easily.
it happened. So probably within 3 months, I had quickly gotten a new website back up and running, and we had started going again, and got a new ad account back up. And literally as soon as we had started doing sales, and I was making more than I was in a week doing that job, I was like, I'm done. I'm wasting my time doing this. And I got back to scaling our e-commerce stuff. Had just found Etsy during that time too. And that's kind of where that had started. So I was doing the Shopify thing and the Etsy thing all at the same time. And then moved on to Amazon here last year. I kind of picked it back up and everything after that initial electronic stint that we were selling everything on, and started really back like August 2020 here. So maybe 8 months ago, after just moving in.
2022, August of
Yeah,
2022.
2022.
Yeah,
Yep.
because here we are, April of 2023, to give the listeners a bit of a timeline.
Yep. So we had just moved over into our new house, had changed all the fixtures and all that stuff out of it, and was like, okay, I'm bored now. After doing nothing for probably about a month and a half, and was like, okay, I need to do something. Started selling on Amazon. Was going through like Home Depot and everything, trying to find tools to sell, and just trying to do the online arbitrage thing. And you'll love this. I didn't realize why I wasn't getting any sales. And it turns out, from my original selling account that I had set up to do the electronics, I was on not the professional seller account. I was just on the regular seller account, the one that it charges you a
A
dollar
dollar per
per item.
listing.
Yep,
Wow.
instead of the pro seller. As soon as I
Yeah.
turned that on, I had read something. I'm like, why am I not getting any sales? I was really frustrated. As soon as I turned that on, paid the $40, literally within about 4 hours, we had like $1,000 in sales. And I come
Wow.
out of my office and I just start screaming. I'm like, oh my God.
I flipped a switch and it works
Literally,
now.
literally flipped a switch, and it
Yeah.
was that simple. And I
Yeah.
think I actually said that to Katie, my fiance. I was like, literally flipped a switch,
Hmm.
and holy shnikes, it just
It blew
started
up.
happening.
For those
Yeah,
who don't know
and
what Chris is talking about, let me just explain to the listeners, Chris, real quick. When you sign up for for an Amazon seller account, you can either go pro, or I can't remember if it's called standard or individual. You want to go pro, which, yeah, $40 a month, it's versus free, but you get so little exposure. The free version is for people who have like two or three things around their house. They want to try to sell them, and they're okay if they don't sell. You don't want that. If you're getting into Amazon, typically we say there's three things. If you're going to learn Amazon the way we teach it around here, the way hundreds of these podcast episodes, success stories you've heard, you're going to need three things. One is a professional Amazon seller account, $40 a month. The other is Proven Amazon course. The third is Keepa. And you're still at less than $100 a month. Well under $100 a month. Keepa, we talked about in podcast episode 369. If you're new around here, I'm not going to dive into what that is. We'll stick a link in the show notes. But yeah, back to the story, man. So you flipped over to a professional account and off to the races.
And just absolutely off to the races. I come out of my office, look over the balcony down to the first floor of our house, and I'm like, I did it. I figured it out, and I'm like, okay. And, fast forward there, that was in October. I think we had done like 20,000 selling the tools and everything our first month, and just kind of steadily had increased that to about 40,000 in sales each month there up until about January. And just coming home from Christmas vacation and everything, I had decided to start a health, fitness, mental toughness program called 75 Hard. And I was like, here, I'm going to, really double down here on, my physical fitness, down on the business. I really needed to develop some mental toughness and realistically discipline, because I was pretty undisciplined in what we were doing and everything. And I was like, here, waking up whenever I want to, just enjoying the perks of being, that entrepreneur. But I wasn't getting necessarily the numbers or what it is I had wanted, personally as my goals. So I was like, here, let me develop the discipline, and started going through every single podcast I could on Amazon. And somehow I happened to have found you on another person's podcast. You were actually being interviewed, and you were talking about this replens thing.
Okay.
And I had listened to it, and I was like, this is awesome. This is like a recession-proof business. If I can find these items that I can easily source, it's not just, a clearance sale that, these tools or these coffee makers or whatever the product is 50% off, and I'm going to make that margin. Those sales are always happening, but I was like, this is the business that I want to do because it's a recession-proof business. And that's kind of what we're going into right now. The way the world is and everything, I'm just like, here, this is it. So I had started listening.
Just to pause you in a second, hold your point. You're going to start listening to our podcast. You said it's recession proof. It's also, it helps you against inflation as well, because as we all know, in inflation, the price of everything goes up. So it gets a little easier to find stuff that you can sell later for more money if the price is already heading up. You're keeping your money, instead of keeping your money under your mattress where the inflation moths are eating it and destroying it, you're keeping it in physical product, which worst case scenario is it's probably going to be worth more money tomorrow. Inflation is not ideal, obviously, but if you're going to keep your money somewhere, you don't have to be a financial genius to understand, you want to keep it in physical products versus currency. And the beauty of the replens model is you're constantly looking for fast moving, easily sourced, easily flipped physical products. So recession proof, inflation proof. Proof is a big word, but it's as guarded as you can get as a business model, especially online, that I've seen. But yeah, please continue. So you found our podcast, you started listening.
Yeah, so I had found the podcast and everything and started just consuming every episode, started going back through older episodes as I would catch up to the newly released ones. I'd go back through as I'm sitting there either packaging or I'm in store trying to source and just scan everything I could. So probably about 2 weeks after finding you and finding the podcast, this is like the second week of January, I said, all right, cool. I'm going to take the time. I'm going to go in store, and I'm going to literally just spend as long as it takes. I don't care. My phone runs out. Cool. I'll come home, recharge it, and then go back out. And literally spent 3 or 4 days, scanned every single item, and just, literally went aisle by aisle by aisle and scanned every item in our local Sam's Club, our local Costco. And then when Katie and we would go to a store or what have you, she'd want to go shopping or go pick something up here, I would literally just, babe, go have fun, and go just start scanning everything I could around. And I showed her how to do it, and she'd help me get through some of the stores because she wanted to spend some time with me and whatnot. But yeah, literally spent like a week just going between the two stores. So it took me like 3 days to scan all of Sam's Club, and then another 3 or 4 days to scan all of Costco, and just started finding our first replens in there. And then, I mean, I even go back to some of the stuff that we had scanned originally that I was like, okay, yeah, this is great, but it's not, some of these ones that were hits out of the park. Now that I've had a lot more reps under my belt over the last 3 months of just constantly selling, I'll go back to those products and be like, oh, wow, how did I not list this?
Right. But now when you say that's hustling, by the way, congratulations, because a lot of times people say, yeah, I tried replens. It didn't really work out for me. Like, okay, what did you do exactly? Well, in the middle of being distracted with 18 other things they're trying to launch right now, they gave it a couple hours and watched the video and scanned 8 things at a Walmart clearance aisle. Like, that's not replens, dude. That is not replens. So you say you're scanning. Words mean things. I want to really dive into that word particularly for finding replens. What were you doing exactly? What tools were you using? Were you using Amazon Seller app to actually scan barcodes? You can come up with replens that way, but you can
So
also walk right past a lot of winners that way too. So dive into this a little bit.
So what I was doing, there were a couple of podcasts that I had found and everything that I was running through and just constantly going through. Yours being one of them, and I had taken little bits from all these different sources and just kind of
Sure.
commingled them into more or less my own method, but more the replens model. So I was using SellerAmp to sit there and scan in store because it's got Keepa built right into it. And then I can see all the active offers, the buy box, whether it's FBM or FBA. And yeah, so basically
Right.
went through the store and input what my shipping costs were off of my UPS commercial account from our print on demand business because we have a little bit negotiated rates and everything. So I input those hard costs and yeah, would just go literally item by item down the rows of each of the aisles and just sit there and scan every single item, scan, input the cost. And then eventually I started getting not a little bit bored, but I would just input the hard cost and then what it was selling on Amazon, save it, and then I'd come home to be a little bit more efficient in the store. I would just save it or snap a photo of it to make sure,
Mhm.
because I wasn't aware at the time how the history worked on SellerAmp, where I could just go back into it. So once I figured that out, I would just literally scan the barcode of everything, snap a photo of it on my phone, input the price, and then come back
Research it later.
and just research everything later.
It-
And that was a tip that I had gotten off of the podcast. I forget who it was. It was one of the guys who he sourced most of his stuff from. He was up in Canada or what have you, but he sourced most of his stuff from like Sam's Club or Costco up there.
yeah. Yeah. And it's because the reason I want to hone in on that word scan just a little bit with you, Chris, because I am not aware of the process you're using currently. I know the big numbers you're putting up and how well you're doing, and that's a lot of hustle. But a lot of times a replan isn't just the item sitting on the shelf. It's the second or third listing. And, it's on page 6. It's that
Mhm.
item appearing on page 6 as a 2-pack, for example. So if you're just scanning the barcode and selling individual, you're going to find there's a lot of great stuff out there for sure. But how much research are you doing beyond? Because we actually have a saying in our community quite a bit, whereas if you're scanning barcodes, you're doing it wrong.
Yeah.
Meaning you're
So
just looking at one listing you're getting one result on Amazon.
so when I would come back through, there were all these variations on these products
Yes.
that I'd find. And again, going through the podcast and everything, I would start going through these listings after I figured out how to do the history on SellerAmp. And it probably took me 2 or 3 days of actually going and scanning in store to figure out how it all worked, how the app actually worked and everything. I'd come back through and I would just sit on a computer, do the research. There would be variations of these packs. But then also in some of the cases, there would be products that were just available on the shelf or whatnot that I would list, and I would list it while I was in store because the numbers on it were so good that by the
Mhm.
time I would get home, we would have sales on it.
Yes, you're doing some merchant fulfill.
So pretty much 90% of the numbers and everything that we've done have been merchant fulfilled. And I'll kind of go into that here in a sec, how I kind of decided to do the merchant fulfilled versus the FBA process. But I wanted for the listeners here to just kind of give an idea of what we had done between January and the end of March. So
Yeah.
we had scaled up in January.
So how many ASINs are we talking about? Just give people before we jump into the.
So you'll love this. It was probably, I have 200 ASINs listed right now. Realistically, though, everything that we had that we were doing all the huge amount of turns on and the bulk of our volume was probably about 20 to 50 good ASINs. And the rest was just, kind of filler or stuff that like a true replen, we would get, one to 5 sales a week.
Yeah,
but
of course.
there was some
the Pareto principle works in this business, right? If you know the 80-20 rule, and that's true for everyone in the replens game. The top 20% of their ASINs are generating 80% of the revenue.
Yep.
Approximately.
Absolutely. But again, there were some volume monsters and stuff that got into a very interesting little predicament on how I had to source them here. So most of the stuff that we do is like either at Sam's Clubs or BJ's, Costco, or even Walmart. I've got a little bit of OA in the mix, but most of it is either kind of like this weird hybrid retail arbitrage, but almost now putting up the numbers that we're doing is kind of like a weird retail arbitrage wholesale model where we're going to the store and instead of buying, 5 of them now, we're buying a lot more.
Right. You're finding ways to buy it in bulk if it's a fast mover for you.
Buying huge amounts of bulk because the stuff is going through that quickly. And true to the replens model, never buying, more than a month's worth of inventory. Kind of my idea on how I approach things was, here, let me go in store, I'll scan the item. If it, checks all my markers, it's got, a 25% ROI or a 15% profit margin on the item, where I'm turning, a $20 item into a $5 profit at the end goal here. That's kind of where, as an FBM seller, that's where I was like, hey, if I'm packaging a box and it's a $5 profit, that's cool with me. How many times can I do that each and every day? So that over the months from January to now, I think we had done like 40,000 in January, and then it just quickly stacked. I'd have to look back at what we had done in February, but I know in March we had done 300,000 in sales.
Wow. That's amazing. 300K. So you really only learned the replens model. I mean, we're just talking a few months ago. Now you're an experienced internet marketer. You've done a lot. You obviously know how to crunch and track your numbers well, which is a skill that's brand new to some people. So you do want to know your numbers, but you dove in and you just this is last month, March 2023. You guys did 300K. What were your net margins on that? What's your ROI net margins, if you know off the top of your head, approximate?
So our net profit on it was 15%. Our ROI, don't know off the top of my head the ROI.
Net margin's more important anyway, really.
But yeah,
$45,000 of net profit basically after all said and done, after everybody's paid and everything else, shipping supplies, right? $45,000 of net profit.
45,000,
a few months into learning replens and how it works. That's phenomenal, dude. I love it.
What kind of set me on this trajectory was in February, off of our sales from August, moving forward. In February, like mid-February, I hop on my account and Amazon had offered me a loan. So I go, okay. And I had a very serious conversation with Katie and everything. And I was like, babe, I think I really need to just take this loan, because either I can take this seriously and have skin in the game with this loan, or I can just keep doing it with our own money and everything. But it would allow me to scale up and buy larger amounts of inventory and not be afraid to take risks when there was a good OA opportunity that would come by. So for instance, there was like this Keurig coffee maker thing that we had launched at the beginning of February. There was this deal on Walmart. It was like 50% off and was making like $30 a unit on it. Bought 25 of them. And it took me like 2 weeks to go through them. And I was like, huh. But I was like, had I not been, had I had the proof of concept down a lot further where I could source this profitable inventory and not be afraid to move it or figure out what it is I needed to do, just kind of getting the reps of going, hey, this process works. I can do this, at scale a little bit more. I felt in doing so and taking the loan, that would allow me to have a little bit more skin in the game, but it would also, double or triple my cash flow at the time for what I was willing to spend and put into the business. So
Absolutely. And just so you know, if you didn't realize it yet, the people who are ready to throw money at you as a successful Amazon seller with a, 25% ROI, 15% net, there's no shortage of, there's a good number of, and many, many really good options. Amazon is on the list of the top 10 from my vantage point, but doesn't necessarily gain you any advantages that you think it might gain you. Like, hey, Amazon's going to love me now because I'm using Amazon lending. No, completely different department. It has nothing to do with security of your account. They'd like you to think that.
And looking back on, my experience with Facebook and everything, I was like, yeah, no, it's not going to give me any advantage. But I was like, it will. The reason why I took it was it was going to make me focus on the business because I was like, hey, I have this payment that I have to make every single month that I need to figure out how I can turn this money as quickly as possible. So that's what I had done. So in February, that's where things took off from the $40,000 a month and just started catapulting up to the point where we had done 500,000 here.
Good for you, man. That's incredible. Are you familiar with have you ever heard me talk about AccrueMe funding, just to talk about some of the creative options that are out there? Like, just for the listeners for a second, is 7-figure funding. There's many great options out there. Some of them are sponsors of our community. I love dropping their names, but we handpick them because we love the way that they're working with sellers. But like with AccrueMe, for example, silentjimdotcom/funding, you can go read about them. They give you a pile of cash and you don't owe any monthly payments. It's based on how much inventory you have, and they give you the money. And then when you're ready to give them their money back, they take a percentage of how much you've grown since they gave you the pile of money. It's a pretty cool model. It's kind of like I equate it to having a rich uncle who's like, hey, here's some money, use it, grow your business. And when you're ready to give me the money back, which you will owe me the money back someday, obviously, but just give me a piece of your growth because I believe in the model. I've seen your track record. So you don't have to just use your own cash to build this thing. Once you're confident, and I love that tone of, you said, once I was confident, proof of concept, you've learned those lessons. You've learned that just because you can turn $1 into $5 doesn't mean you're ready to throw $10,000 at a process. No. You want to turn $10 into 50, and then you want to turn, $50 into 250. You want to scale slowly. So you're confident in the system. You're not breaking any of the, the parts that are important and vital for the process. But yeah, it sounds like you're positioned really well to take advantage of some funding options, and you can certainly make a lot more money very quickly using other people's money, leveraging that. So well done, man. So tell me something about some of this merchant fulfill process. And for those who don't know, let me just fill in a couple gaps before I turn you loose on merchant fulfill. Okay. You mentioned earlier Seller Amp. I believe, I don't remember for sure, but I think we've got either a discount or special deal with those guys. I'll stick a link in the show notes. It'll at least be our affiliate link if you don't mind throwing us a bone if you want to go check out Seller Amp. There's so many great tools that are used by the different successful replens Amazon sellers in our community. By no means is that a magic button, but a lot of people like it. There's a lot of but the thing it has to have is Keepa. It's vital that you look at the Keepa data. So whatever tool you are using to help you make grid replens decisions, make sure it incorporates Keepa. Go listen to episode 369, like I mentioned earlier. But if you do end up using Seller Amp, we got a link there. And the other thing when we're talking about merchant fulfill, I just don't want to lose anybody here. When you're selling on Amazon, you can go one of two paths with your inventory. You can do both if you'd like. Send some of your inventory to Amazon's warehouse, do FBA, fulfillment by Amazon. They store it, ship it to the customers as the order happens, which is what most people do. But in your case, interestingly enough, you scaled very quickly, $300,000 last month at a great net profit, doing mostly merchant fulfill, or some people in our community call it FBM, fulfillment by merchant. So you've got the packaging and you're printing the labels, and as orders come in, you're popping them out really fast because Amazon expects a lot of accuracy and speed And some people are afraid of the process as a result. They're like, oh, I'll just let Amazon handle it. Well, the fees are a lot higher if you let Amazon handle it. But the pushback, and I want you to address this too, Chris, is you get a lot more attention on your listings if you're FBA, because now you're selling to prime buyers.
Yep.
Whereas people who go in and say, I only want to see prime deals, they're not seeing your stuff. And I'm sure you've probably figured that out at this point, but you're doing really well in spite of that. So talk me through all of that at whatever angle you'd like.
So, okay. So here's what I was going to say earlier that I had said I would eventually get to here in talking to you on the FBM process and what we're doing. So I kind of decided to approach everything a little bit differently on our FBM since we have that previous experience running our print on demand business, doing, volume of fulfillment and everything. I was like, okay, cool. We're doing this all out of our 2-car garage now. By the way, and just so the reason why I wanted to do FBM was because back when we were doing everything FBA from August to about December, I had transitioned everything over. Kind of stuff just wasn't moving as well as I would have liked it to, especially leading up into the holidays. So I was just like, here, let me FBA it. Plus, it meant I kind of had some of my free time. I could just go on vacation, enjoy the holidays and all that. Well, as we got back from the holidays, I had started sending in FBA shipments of like our tools and stuff that we were doing at the time. And the halt of the product actually getting checked in Amazon had actually kind of nudged me to do more FBM. So as I had picked up the replens and everything, what I decided to start doing, and after developing a proof of concept with our inventory and kind of the products that we're on, I was like, okay, here. My rule kind of became, if I hold it more than 14 days, I'm going to look at moving it to FBA. So there was a couple of like online arbitrage or BOLO type items, which stands for be on the lookout, that had came over my path from a couple of friends and stuff, and they just were not moving FBM. I had maybe sold 1 or 2, but I had like 30 or 40 of them just sitting there. That was more of an OA type deal, not necessarily a replen, but there are certain products that move really well FBM, kind of like your consumables or your grocery items. Some of those will sell really well at volume FBM. And like I had said, there were some items that before I had even left Costco or Sam's, I would list and it would already be sold by the time I got back home.
Are you talking about like some short expiration date grocery items by any chance?
Kind of, but not. I mean, they're shelf stable. So yeah.
Okay. Just some items tend to do better merchant fulfill. And we've definitely noticed that as well.
And what I mean by merchant fulfill is there's not a ton of FBA offers on it. There may be 4 or 5 FBA offers, but like I had said, we were waiting, sometimes 20 or 30 days for our shipments to get checked in. They would either be really quick or really slow.
Yeah. Obviously, the FBA, especially around the holidays, really starts to drag. I mean, you can see 6-week check-in times.
But even in January, it was bad for us.
It can be. You're exactly right. So the opportunity to list it available for sale right now is an advantage using merchant fulfill. That's where you hear the stories of people filling a shopping cart at a local retail store, and as they're checking out, the sales have already happened for the product in their cart because they were listing it as they pulled it off the shelf. Right. And so they're selling stuff before they've even paid for it. And that's a lot of this is, and here's something I love about your story too, Chris, is I can see kind of the ebb and flow of people. They started off, going back 6-7 years ago, doing the replens model. When we first started introducing it, was all about local retail. And people say, hey, you can do this online too. It's not as convenient because you got to wait for your inventory to get here. And sometimes it's not what you ordered. But then suddenly everyone got really enamored with doing online arbitrage. And suddenly we start hearing a lot of people saying more recently, I don't want to go to stores. I don't want to send a shopper to stores. I just want to do it all online, because they associate that with being automated. And suddenly we have people like you popping up going, hey guys, I did 300,000 last month local retail, basically. And the stuff that's good, I'll order it online, but my research is local and it's local retail store shelves. There's gold there. I love that about your story and just the commitment to store names that we all recognize. You're not even getting off the beaten path at all. I mean, you're going to stores that we all have access to within driving distance, the vast majority of us in the United States anyway. Anyone can get online and buy that same inventory at the same prices, by the way, but you just put in the time doing the research based off local retail. I love that part of your story. Hey, I hope you're enjoying the interview as much as I loved being the guy doing the interviewing today with my guest, Chris. He's a phenomenal guest, and I know you're going to love part 2, which is located very near part 1. Unless you're listening to this the day it came out, you might have to wait another day or two. We'll have part 2 of our interview located as our next episode. So go to silentjimdotcom, look for the episode you just heard, and look right next to it. The next day, you will see the episode for part 2 and enjoy the rest of the interview. We'll have more great episodes for you very soon. Thanks for joining me today.